Hi, I'm Corey Driver, and this is Moving Forward. So this week we are in Proverbs 31, James 3, and Mark 9, and we're talking about the wisdom of preparation. Now, very recently, I helped put on a PhD seminar for students who are looking to incorporate research on faith and faiths into their work on entrepreneurship. And it took a while to put together. We had to get the venue, we had to get the catering, we had to get the students, of course, we had to get the speakers. It took a lot of doing, and we couldn't just make it happen in a week or a month. There was a lot of background. And when you're putting on events, especially big professional events, you need a lead time of months, if not a year or more. It's wise to just get started early, and it's kind of foolish to wait till the last moment to make things happen. The same is true with our lives of faith, with our lives of work. It is wise to prepare ahead of time. The lectionary passages this week talk about the wisdom of preparation. Now, Proverbs 31 is about a woman of virtue or noble character, and it needs to be set in its proper context. So Proverbs 31 is talking about a woman who is ruling, part of a ruling couple, just as the rest of Proverbs is meant for a young ruler. Look at 1:1, 10:1, 25, 1 through 3. This is not an every woman in the same sense that Proverbs is not directed to every man. This is about how to rule well. So the internal logic of this chapter, or this part of the chapter, is that a choice between a life of idleness or a life of economic engagement needs to be an actual choice, right? Like you could just kind of sit around, but that is not what the Proverbs 31 woman chooses, and not everybody gets that choice. Most people in the ancient world need to work to live and eat and make it through the day. So this is really not for just everybody, and the own internal logic assumes a ruling couple. Look at verse 23. So this is about a woman who rules. And this is a woman who buys land for herself, invests in that land, verse 16, to make it more profitable, and uses the profits of that land to import exotic food. This is economic and entrepreneurial engagement at its finest. And the woman's wisdom is displayed most clearly in her preparation. Now, the woman makes warm clothing for herself and her family, verses 19 and 21 through 22, and also for the poor, verse 20, and also for her servants, verse 15, and also for the dispossessed former inhabitants of the land. Yeah, I read it that way. Verse 24. The wisdom here is that the woman prepares to be a blessing, not just to herself, not just to hoard resources that she makes from engaging economically with the land, but that she prepares everyone in her charge. She is responsible for everyone, her family, her servants, other folk, the poor, and she takes care of them, and she prepares them for the hard times that are coming. And the hard times always come, just as predictably as the rainy season. James also celebrates the wisdom of preparation. And James inserts here that not all wisdom is equal. There are some who would say wisdom is working towards ambition, trying to outdo, trying to move towards or activate action based on jealousy. That's not really wisdom, certainly not in James's mind. James will say that it's not really wisdom if it does not bring first peace. And peace not in the sense of absence of armed hostility, but peace in the positive sense of righteous living in harmony with neighbors. Far too many, again, air quote, wise leaders fail because they did not prepare themselves in wisdom, and they did not prepare themselves in wisdom to deal with their own particular lusts. James does an interesting review of biblical history and points out some of Israel's greatest kings and their follies. James says, "You lust and you do not have, so you commit murder." He is, of course, recalling to mind David and his treatment of Bathsheba and Uriah the Hittite. You lust and you do not have, so you commit murder. David did not wisely prepare to keep his lusts in check. What is the source of conflicts? Is it not the lusts within you that are at war in your members? Certainly, we are thinking of Solomon filling up Jerusalem with many, many wives and building temples to their many, many gods. And it is Solomon's rampant idolatry that causes the conflict between the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah. What is the cause of conflict? Is it not the lusts that wage war within your parts? James is saying, look, we hold these up as good kings, but were they really wise? Well, they didn't prepare to govern themselves well. They would have been wiser to prepare better, to hold themselves in check first, and then do the governing. They did not prepare themselves well, unlike the woman in Proverbs 31. Jesus, in this week's lectionary reading, also works towards the wisdom of preparation. Now, of course, in Mark especially, Jesus does not want everyone to know what is going to happen, but he tells the disciples that he will be captured, tortured, murdered, and buried, and then eventually raised. Now, the disciples could have asked wise questions to help prepare. Jesus, what should we do when you're arrested? What does any of this mean? How can we prepare? What should we do? How should we act? How do you want us to respond? However, instead, the disciples are too scared to ask Jesus questions. And if that were the end of it, that might have been okay, actually. But as it turns out, they weren't really too scared to ask Jesus questions, just too scared to ask good questions. Instead, the disciples are asking questions of themselves. Who is the greatest? Teachers in the audience, you've had this experience, right? You introduce a new concept. It's very important. You're going to be discussing it the rest of the year. It's a foundation on which you're going to build, and you ask for questions or engagement, and the room is just crickets. And then people start talking, and it's all about who's the most popular or what's going on, or for heaven's sake, celebrity culture. And it's just like, come on, you don't get it? You're not going to engage? And that's exactly what's going on with the disciples here. There is no wisdom in the lack of preparation. Jesus has told them what is going to happen, and they just want to know who's the greatest. And Jesus, being the master teacher that he is, uses even this to prepare the disciples and says, look, the greatest will be the servant of all. And what does the servant do but to help the master get ready and take care of the needs of the master? And to further the point, Jesus takes a small child, puts that child amongst them, and we're thinking small child, maybe toddler, really small, puts that child amongst them, and then scoops that child up in his own arms to model for them what it is to be the greatest. It is to take care of those who can't take care of themselves yet, or maybe ever. Jesus models, hey, like a kid, you've got to help a kid, help them grow and learn. And, we're potty training in our house right now. It's kind of a thankless task, but it is important preparation for the rest of life. That's what it means. That's what it's about. Preparing even a little kid for the rest of their life. That's wisdom, and that's greatness. The one who would be great, even if you don't understand the lesson about what is going to happen with crucifixion and death and resurrection, at least get this. There's wisdom in preparing, and there's greatness in getting a little child care. Elsewhere in the Gospel of Luke, the 14th chapter, Jesus tells a parable about being ready, right? That you would prepare as if a king marching off to war, to say, look, got to count the cost ahead of time so that I don't get embarrassed by going off and not being ready. There's great wisdom in preparing. Proverbs 31 gives the example of a woman who prepares herself, her family, the poor in her neighborhood, her servants, and even folks of a different racial, ethnic background to get them ready so that they will be safe. That's wise. James gives the counterexample of kings who are not wise and did not really prepare themselves and suffered the consequences. Jesus gives an explicit example of wisdom and greatness to quell his disciples' arguments about who is the greatest. The greatest is the one who takes care of the next generation. The greatest is the one who is the servant of all and loves kids and takes care of kids. That's wisdom. We are called to prepare wisely, and especially to prepare for peace that will lead to peaceful relations. And that's James 3:17 through 18. Let us all then have the wisdom to prepare for whatever is coming next. Thanks be to God. Amen.